Hello and welcome to Viewpoint. I'm Volodymyr Solohub. Joining me now to discuss the impact on Ukraine's international relations of the Paris attacks is the former Minister of Foreign Affairs and a current MP, Mr. Borys Tarasyuk. Mr. Tarasyuk, welcome to Viewpoint.
Good morning.
Mr. Tarasyuk, there are more and more talks that Russia benefits a lot from the most recent Paris attacks. Well, we're not trying to imply any conspiracy theories here. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think that Russia is directly linked to the terrorist attacks in Paris, but eventually, indirectly, Russia is benefiting. I agree with you. And in what way? The very fact of Russia's airstrikes in Syria is producing, subsequently producing the flow of migrants. And this flow of migrants is going to Europe. Europe is too preoccupied already in connection with this flow of migrants. For Europe, Paris is not the reason for discussing the future of Schengen zone. For Europe, the problem of Schengen zone is about the huge amount of migrants from affected area, and second, the ineffectiveness, as it was recently recognized by the President of the European Commission, Mr. Juncker, the ineffectiveness of border control on the so-called outside borders of the European Union. So Russia is benefiting definitely. For Russia, the split in the European Union is the constant and the ultimate objective of their foreign policy, using different instruments. And at the same time, the European Union has to do a lot in order to get control over the uncontrolled inflow of migrants.
Mr. Tarasyuk, during the G20 summit, which is currently taking place in Turkey, Presidents Obama and Putin were spotted conferring with each other on the sidelines of the summit. Do you think that with the Syrian air campaign, that Russia is trying not only to regain its influence in the Middle East, but also to restore its impact as a global superpower?
I think so, yes. And I think that for Russia, the policy of Russia, if one to describe it in a very brief manner, is to impose on the outside world the perception of a global player. Literally speaking, I would see the situation in the following way, that Russia is a screen player, and scenarios are being prepared in the Kremlin, so the outside world is just reacting. There is no active policy from the outside world. I do understand the countries of the European Union, the United States and other democratic countries. So no adequate answer is dictating a further aggressive policy of Russia.
Mr. Tarasyuk, do you think that these attacks in Paris will have any effect on Ukraine's standing on the international arena, on the standing of Ukraine's question, the question of the war in Ukraine?
I don't think that it will directly imply Ukraine's image or even spending abroad, because they are miserable. What I think that this will have an impact on the consolidation on effectiveness of Ukrainian law enforcement. And I think that this, the Paris terrorist attacks should force all democratic countries to learn the lesson. The lesson is that there is not enough coordination between law enforcement and special forces among the countries, among democratic countries. And Ukraine, I do refer Ukraine to this group of countries, democratic countries, which has to react adequately on this threat of terrorist attacks. But we have our own terrorist attack, which is called the anti-terrorist operation, but in fact the war, the Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So this is, here we are dealing with the state terrorism, I would call it, from Russia, whereas the threat of terrorist attacks against some European countries is of a different nature. It is from a mythical, non-existent state, but nevertheless this threat is real for the countries of the European Union. One should not exclude the repetition of such terrorist attacks against Ukraine, against the objects in Ukraine. So, and for this, our special forces has to be ready and to coordinate more closely their activity with with the colleagues from the countries of the European Union and NATO.
Mr. Tarasyuk, if you were saying that these terrorist attacks will raise the issue of coordination between the law enforcement agencies, do you think that in the light of Ukraine's aspirations to get the visa-free regime with the EU, this can be viewed as an obstacle by the European partners, the ineffectiveness of Ukraine's law enforcement agencies, the corruption within the Ukraine's law enforcement agencies, and this may hinder, this may jeopardize Ukraine's visa-free aspirations?
I think that we are facing two possible negative scenarios. One scenario is outside of Ukraine, within the European Union and Schengen zone. So there are serious concerns about the ineffectiveness of security concerns of the countries of Schengen zone in connection with the uncontrolled migration. And this may damage the very idea of Schengen zone, and thus may has as a consequence the inability or unreadiness of countries of the European Union to consider visa liberalization for Ukrainian citizens. But this is still a hypothetical possibility. And another problem, that is our internal problem, the problem connected with the implementation of visa liberalization plan. By the way, Ukraine is about to finish the 5th year of the beginning of visa liberalization. We, as you remember, we started this process end of 2010. Now we are in end of 15. So 5 years is too long, too much. And compared to the countries of Balkan, who covered this way for just 2 years. So I think that 5 years for Ukraine is a disaster. I think that a lot has not been done by previous authorities, but the democratic authorities are already about 2 years, and still, there is no light.
No significant progress.
No light at the end of the tunnel. No, the progress is, and in particular, last week we in the Parliament, in fact, implemented our duties. But the question mark arises: what about the government? Why the government has submitted this draft laws only at the end of summer, beginning of autumn, in September? So what the government was doing before? This is indicative of inefficiency of our government in implementing their part of the job. The Parliament was not protracting, consideration of very important, necessary draft laws. As soon as they appeared in the Parliament, they were approved. Of course, not without problems, but nevertheless, we have implemented our part of the job quite quickly, including such very sensitive issues as non-discrimination law, having in mind the non-discrimination on sexual orientation, which was, conceptually, historically very difficult for many politicians to accept, but nevertheless we did it. So I think that there are a lot of other issues which were not directly linked to visa liberalization, but nevertheless for our partners in the European Union they were very important. For example, like fighting corruption.
There was a lot of discussion about the asset recovery in the parliament, and with great difficulties did this law pass in the Ukrainian parliament as well.
Yes, and some other issues still we are lacking the progress in approving the law concerning the identification documents for Ukrainian citizens. So it is not enough to have the passports, the foreign passports for traveling abroad for Ukrainian citizens with the biometric. But it is no less important to have a local identification documents which couldn't be, falsified and thus causing more trust from our partners in the European Union.
Yeah, it looks like despite the fact that the Parliament did pass these laws, still a lot of work needs to be done. Mr. Tarasyuk, many thanks for finding the time to come and talk to us. Former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Borys Tarasyuk. This has been a discussion on the impact of the attacks in Paris on global foreign policy and Ukraine's in particular. I'm Volodymyr. Thank you for watching Viewpoint.